So by now, everybody should be aware of the unfortunate results of this election. A lot of damage has been done to this country, to the Conservative Party. But it's not the Conservatives, at least not the federal Conservatives, that have done that damage. A lot of that damage actually stems from the fake Conservative Premier of Ontario, the fat pig with rabies mentality. Of course, CTV, who I know you're watching, the mentality of a fat pig with rabies, Doug Ford. He is now Canada's most hated person by, 41% of the country. And that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. And Donald Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump didn't say some too nice things. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. We're en route to 500,000 subscribers, and it'd be super awesome if we got there sooner than later. Without further ado, let's get into this video. Starting off with how the Conservative campaign is being criticized by two premiers. One of them is Doug Ford. Let's have a look.
As Prime Minister Mark Carney is holding transition meetings, federal Conservatives are assessing the results, while some of their provincial cousins have some pointed criticism.
I hope they do some soul searching.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston didn't hold back in his assessment of the federal election.
I think the Conservative Party of Canada was very good at pushing people away, not so good at pulling people in.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford was one of those people. His team openly criticized Poilievre's campaign, and clearly there's still bad blood.
Last time I checked, Pierre Poilievre never came out in our election. Matter of fact, him or one of his lieutenants told every one of his members, "Don't you dare go out and help the PCs." Isn't that ironic? But anyways, I'm not going to dig deep into this.
A federal Conservative campaign source tells CTV News that despite losing his seat, Pierre Poilievre is making calls to the grassroots of the party to get their feedback. One defeated Conservative MP who once falsely claimed the cost of living was driving parents to traffic their kids posted a message online calling for her party to be a more moderate opposition.
To hold them accountable, but find that sweet spot where we are not so extreme,
Without a seat in the House of Commons, Poilievre could have one of his MP-elects step down and give up their riding so he can run in a by-election.
And then the Prime Minister has up to 6 months to actually call that by-election. So do the math. We're looking, at the end of 2025 before that by-election is probably even called.
With Jagmeet Singh losing his seat, the NDP must also choose an interim leader, and a party source says caucus could start that process next week. After failing to win more seats, Green Party co-leader Jonathan Pedneau announced he is stepping down, leaving Elizabeth May as the party's sole leader and only MP.
So that's what the premiers are saying about the federal campaign. But what are people saying about the premiers, specifically Doug Ford? Well, let's take to X and see what's going on. You've got the Pleb reporter saying Doug Ford is a liberal and a traitor to Conservatives all over the country. He needs to go. And an awesome amount of support for that type of post. You also have the Pleb saying, I despise Doug Ford more than I do Mark Carney. He deserves to lose his job for his betrayal of Conservatives across the country. He will never be our leader. It's time to replace him in Ontario with a real Conservative. And I have to say, I couldn't agree more, which brings me back to the original comment I made about Doug Ford, the fat pig with rabies mentality. Of course, I wouldn't comment about his appearance. Why would I? It doesn't just stop there. You actually have Conservative federal MP who just got reelected, Jamil Javani, Pierre's new guy, had this to say on X. It's a photo of Doug Ford ripping off his Ontario Conservative shirt with a hidden Liberal shirt underneath. This is quite literally from our federal Conservative MP, Jamil Javani. You can see by the gray check mark, it is officially him. And let me just follow him. That is absolutely phenomenal. Over 1 million views on that post. when you look at the amount of people that publicly endorsed Pierre Poilievre, you had awesome unions, the broil makers, I believe that is. You have the Toronto Police Association. You have so many incredible people and organizations that publicly endorsed Pierre Poilievre, but somebody who never did was Doug Ford. Doug Ford was hypercritical of Pierre. He also is the premier under the Conservative Ontario Party in Ontario. And so, yeah, he kind of dropped the ball, not by accident. It was very much by design. So keep that in mind, Ontario, when the next election comes around. Doug Ford is not a conservative. He's a traitor to this country. He's a traitor to conservatism in this country. And I think he's going to be the next target for a lot of creators. I think you're going to see a lot of people really be pissed off with Doug Ford. I believe Northern Perspective, I don't want to quote them, but I think they might have mentioned their criticism about Doug Ford. I believe also Moose on the Loose has done the same thing. The Pleb, obviously. And, well, I think this is just the beginning. Doug Ford is not a conservative. But let's shift away from Canadian stuff and let's take a look now at what President Trump had to say about Mark Carney and what his plans are for Canada in the near future.
The Minister of Canada ran against, not only against the Conservatives, but also against you. Yesterday, yesterday he spoke about American betrayal. Are you interested in rebuilding relations with Canada, and if so, how?
No, well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." You know, he was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. Couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. You know, it was a very mixed signal because it's almost even, which makes it very complicated for the country. It's a pretty tight race, but he's a very nice gentleman, and he's going to come to the White House very shortly, within the next week or less.
Honestly, my honest opinion is that Pierre ran an incredible campaign. Pierre did a phenomenal job. He did a great job of doing public speaking. He did a great job of hosting the rallies. Him and his wife were an amazing couple doing amazing things and providing a beacon of hope to this country that we so desperately need. Not needed, but still continue to need. And it wasn't his fault that he lost. Yeah, sure, the left can make fun of him all they want, and I don't blame him. We'd be doing the same thing if Mark Carney lost his own riding and if Mark Carney lost the election. But this fight is not over for Pierre, and it's not over for conservatives in this country. In fact, the fight is only really beginning. And somebody who now wants to bring that to the mainstream media is Pierre Poilievre's right-hand man, Andrew Scheer. Let's take a look at an interview that he had with Vashi one-on-one.
I appreciate you making the time for the conversation. I know from a statement that you released yesterday that you want Mr. Poilievre to stay on. Has Mr. Poilievre decided that he will?
Absolutely. Pierre is a fighter, and he's doing it for the people who have been left behind for this government. That's really what inspires him. The Liberals have caused so much hardship for people, and we heard those stories across the country. People who are still living in their parents' basements because they can't afford to own a home. People have lost their jobs and their livelihoods because of Liberal anti-energy and natural resource policies. And he's really inspired by those people who are counting on our party to deliver that real change. So we had incredible gains. He led our party to historic highs in every corner of the country, gained seats in every province. We're disappointed that we didn't form the government, but there's a lot to build from here. And Pierre's inspirational leadership got us here, and his continued leadership will be what delivers a victory next time.
Why did it fail to secure his own seat?
Well, look, I mean, even in his own seat, he saw an increase in votes for himself.
But he lost by 4,000 votes.
No, but when you look at the utter collapse of the NDP, I mean, I come from Saskatchewan, the birthplace of the CCF and Tommy Douglas and all the heroes on the radical left, and they came in third. Every election I've ever fought in since 2004, the NDP were in the low 30s, high 20s. Last time I checked in province-wide, they're 7.5%. So that is at play in a lot of areas. Some of the seats that we weren't successful in, we saw historic gains. We saw massive amounts of new voters. There's a story to be told there about all the new people that Pierre has attracted to our movement. I mean, people who say that some of the criticisms I just heard on the lead-in to the show, they're just not looking at the facts. The facts are more people voted for us than ever before. We got a higher percentage than ever in the modern Conservative history, and we picked up seats that we haven't held in some cases in 20 years. So did we do enough to win? Clearly, we have more work to do. There's another step to this journey, but there's an incredible base of support here that we could not have achieved without Pierre Poilievre's inspirational leadership.
I think you're pointing to comments from Premier Doug Ford in Ontario and Premier Tim Houston in Nova Scotia. And I take your point about all the gains, and I think that's a completely fair comment on what happened. But like you said, it wasn't enough to win. And the Liberals actually increased their share of the popular vote by more than yours did after a record that you've spent 2 years criticizing and gaining in popularity for criticizing. You still couldn't clinch a win after a 10-year record of the Liberal government that you have told Canadians repeatedly is terrible for them. Why is that not about more than just the NDP's failure? Why doesn't responsibility for that lie at Pierre Poilievre's feet?
Well, look, we're going to go through the process of finding out exactly what the campaign got right and what the campaign might have missed, or what the calibration that might need to be addressed going forward. But at the end of the day, when we look, there was a massive shift in the political landscape when Justin Trudeau stepped down, and quite frankly, we had a new Liberal leader that didn't get a lot of scrutiny from the media, didn't get a lot of the same tough questions that Conservatives tend to get, and immediately went into an election campaign. So it drastically shifted the landscape. Obviously, it's our job to win elections as political campaigners and as party systems. We don't do it for ourselves. We do it for those people. We do it for the people who are counting on us. And that's where our disappointment is today, is that there were so many people hoping for that real change. I mean, almost 42% of Canadians were hungry for something completely different. And now Mark Carney is going to go down and double down on all the same policies as Justin Trudeau. So clearly, it's tough after that. But let's not lose sight of the fact that we are in an incredibly stronger position, that we are so much closer than ever before. I think at least, 7.5% more than we got in the last election. Huge gains to build on here. New caucus members from areas that, by the way, are ground zero for being threatened by U.S. tariffs. I mean, we picked up seats in Windsor. We picked up seats in Hamilton. In my riding where we make steel, we held on to all those ridings. All the places in the country where people are directly affected by the threats of U.S. tariffs, forestry, mining, oil and gas, potash, manufacturing, steel, we won those voters. So what we need to do is we need to look at what is the next step? What is that gap to get the other few percentage points that we need to form government? And that's what we're going to be doing over the next days and weeks.
If I understand you right, though, you're saying it's the fault of, it's basically because of what happened to the NDP. It's the fault of the media. I mean, you have two conservative premiers, with respect, you have two conservative premiers saying it was the strategy employed, that essentially Tim Houston said the Conservatives are pushing more people away than pulling in. These are Conservatives. This isn't me just making it up.
It's just demonstrably false by the facts. I mean, the facts are it doesn't make sense.
Why didn't Pierre Poilievre talk to Tim Houston or talk to Doug Ford? Isn't that weird?
You can't simultaneously say we pushed people away when we got more votes. That's just factually incorrect. That doesn't work on a mathematical level. I don't know what else to say. I mean, we got more votes, we got a higher percentage, we won more seats. Clearly, we weren't pushing people away. We reached historic highs. That's just a nonsensical statement that doesn't hold up to a second's worth of scrutiny.
But it's coming from a person who clearly feels like there was no outreach to the people who supported him and to him himself, right?
So supported who?
Tim Houston.
I'm not sure I follow the question.
He's making that statement based on what he has observed and his own experience, which he did. Well, he has said that there was no outreach, for example, from Pierre Poilievre to him.
So his
Doug
feelings
Ford.
are hurt?
I don't know. I'm just conveying what he said, and I understand what you're saying, but I can't discount what two conservative premiers are saying. Like Doug Ford is the premier of the most populous province in the country. Like, does what he say not matter at all? Like, if he feels that no outreach was done to him or his supporters, isn't that something to just take stock of?
I just don't believe that's true. And again, we're on this. We're in this not because we're worried about interpersonal relationships with someone like Doug Ford. We're worried about the people in Ontario who are affected by terrible Liberal policies. That's who we are listening to. That's who we're thinking about doing that outreach to and getting them on side and addressing their needs. And I'll point out, Pierre Poilievre got more votes in Ontario than Doug Ford did. Pierre Poilievre got a higher percentage of the vote than Doug Ford did.
Won a third majority.
More people
you have
in
lost
Ontario.
A fourth election.
More people in Ontario wanted Pierre Poilievre to be Prime Minister than wanted Doug Ford to be Premier. That is just the facts. So, do we have some work to do? Do we have to figure out next steps? Obviously, Vashi, we didn't win the election. That hurts, and it hurts for a lot of people who are counting on us. And that is who we are focused on right now. Those people who place their trust in us, the thousands of volunteers, the candidates who put their name on the ballot, the people who have lost their jobs and remortgaged their house to pay for bills. Those are the people that we need to talk to and show that we're still going to keep fighting for them. And that is what Pierre is doing. Ever since Pierre launched his leadership campaign, he has been consistent. He is fighting for those people who are left behind by Ottawa. When Ottawa caters to special interests, when the Liberal government rewards their friends and imposes a crazy ideology. I mean, Mark Carney has written a book extolling the virtues of the carbon tax. He said he's going to keep the carbon tax on the industrial side. That means job losses in places like Regina and Hamilton. So those are the people that Pierre is focused on. I wish Conservatives at other levels around the country would help, would be more cognizant of that it's about the people. It's about the people that they represent as premiers or as other politicians. It's not about settling interpersonal differences. I don't think Canadians care about that. I think Canadians are worried about how they're going to pay their mortgage, how they're going to move out of their home and start their parents' home and start a life for themselves.
But don't
and
Canadians
that's what we're going to be
also want to
focused
see,
on.
for example, somebody who is running to represent all the things you just said, the interests of people who feel left behind? Don't they want to see that person working with other leaders and working towards better outcomes for everyone? You're dismissive of, for example, for the Premier's support in Ontario, he won a third majority mandate. You have failed to win a fourth time around.
As I said, there are dynamics that we have to figure out to make sure that doesn't happen again. But again, more people wanted Pierre Poilievre to be Prime Minister in Ontario than wanted Doug Ford to be Premier. That's just a fact.
But
I'll tell you what Pierre Poilievre
I just
didn't
feel
do.
like it sounds like you guys are in denial that you lost. I won, but I lost. I don't understand.
Who's denying that?
No.
I'm just saying
get
your
that you built it.
prescription is to do something that Premier Ford seems to be asking for. I'm just pointing out that, well, for sure we have to take a look and take stock and say, what do we need to do to win next time? I'm just pointing out that Pierre Poilievre is he's popular. He's more popular in Ontario than Doug Ford is, just based on the votes. Like that's not a subjective opinion. If we just count ballots, that is just an objectively true statement.
Didn't the Liberals win the popular vote though in Ontario?
No. Federal, I'm just saying when you're talking about popularity, when you're talking about base of support, these are just facts. I'll tell you what Pierre Poilievre didn't do. Pierre Poilievre didn't endorse Bonnie Crombie. Pierre Poilievre didn't praise opponents of Premier Ford and the Ontario PC party. So, look, I think it's time. What I would say to everybody in Canada, every Conservative, every type of every level, we can all agree that Liberal policies will be bad for Canada. So let's work together. Let's stop this kind of thing, this kind of finger pointing. We will absolutely take a hard look at what decisions were made and why were they made and what data went into making those decisions. What do we need to do to be successful next time? And again, not because we want the blue team in and not because out of our party's sake, but I'll tell you, Vashi, I knocked on doors in every corner of this country. The despair that people had if the Liberals got another term was real. I mean, we had people weeping, crying, telling us their stories at rallies and on the doorstep. People weren't just saying, we hope you win. They were saying, you gotta win. And that's what's disappointing today, knowing that we weren't successful. And that's what's gonna drive us to put aside all this back and forth with other Conservative politicians. That's what's going to drive Pierre to stay focused on those people and their stories and bring them hope again. So it's early days after the election. There's a lot of work for us to do, but I can tell you that Pierre is fighting and he's driven by that need to restore that hope for Canadians.
Does he feel a responsibility for letting those people down? I remember years ago speaking to you after your loss. You won the popular vote. You lost against a majority government, the Liberal government. You brought them still to a minority, though. He lost the popular vote and couldn't win after a decade of the Trudeau government and 2 minority governments. Like, why was it appropriate for you to step down in that instance, but not for him?
I mean, to compare these results to 2019, I don't even mind saying I was leader in 2019. Pierre was leader this time. Massive gains, actually.
But you won the popular vote.
This is we're in the early days after the election. There is no one that could have built up this team, this platform, other than Pierre. I mean, it's almost like everyone forgets that Justin Trudeau was a popular prime minister with a whole lot of support for his policies. And Pierre, through a systematic litigation of the damage that was doing to Canadians, forced a sitting prime minister who did not want to go to resign. Okay, that's no small accomplishment. So this idea that it was no big deal to go into an election with this kind of footing is just false. It took Pierre's vision, it took Pierre's leadership style to put us in the position that we were. We got 42% of the vote. That's more votes
than. But in
than.
January,
if I could just say, Pierre Poilievre got a higher percentage of the vote than Jean Chrétien ever got, than Paul Martin, than Stephen Harper, than Justin Trudeau. So we need to put this in perspective.
But they all won majority governments.
Yeah,
not Paul Martin, but the other ones.
Okay, but clearly, we need to think about a few things about how we fell short and why we fell. No one's here denying that. And my message to those 8 million plus, or around 8 million, I haven't done a recent check, but about 8 million people who voted Conservative hoping for that change. My message is, we get that there is disappointment. We get that we need to figure something else out to win next time. We're not taking that for granted. No one's saying here, that we don't have some work to do to figure that out. But there's an incredible base of support that only Pierre Poilievre could have done for our party, and he's the only person that can continue that and finish the job.
Will he run in a by-election? I mean, I know the government will call the by-election, but is it someone going to step aside in like a so-called safe seat? Like, has that decision been made?
Look, these are early days. It's 2 days after the election. It's something that we'll be addressing going forward. But I can tell you that Pierre is staying on. He's fighting. He's gonna work with our caucus. He's gonna work with our loyal volunteers and our activists to keep the momentum going. And I am very confident that as we get through the difficult days, the next days and weeks, as we figure some of these things out, we're gonna come out the other side with a more united team, with a bigger team, with more representation from more provinces. And Pierre is the man to deliver that victory in the next election.
In the meantime, while he's not in the House, will you be leading the party in the House?
These are
Still not decided.
Yeah,
okay, had to check. Okay.
And so that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes this video. I would love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about the interview, about what Donald Trump's plans are for Canada in the near future, about Doug Ford. Let me know down below in the comments. Since this is the end of the video, I'd love to encourage you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in another video. Bye for now.